photographer, or the... And now we have the visitor. This one comes from a Reddit user called Fan and Depressed. They posted this picture with the caption, "Got a notification from my smart home app in the middle of the night saying your doorbell detected a visitor." That's all he put, and that's all that was needed. He posted it to the creepy subreddit and it has gained over 34,000 upvotes. One of the top comments said, "Why are you doing this? Because you were home." That's a quote from the movie Strangers, where some twisted home invaders give their reason for terrorizing a woman in her home. It's a great movie, and yeah, it does remind me of this too. Can you imagine how terrifying it would be to see this on your phone app in the middle of the night? There was no follow-up story to this. I just hope they were alright. Next up at number 9 now, we have the mummified captain. This is the disturbing story of Manfred Fritz Bajorat, a German man who was found in his boat by 2 fishermen off the coast of the Philippines. He was dead. His corpse was preserved by dry ocean winds, hot temperatures, and the salty sea air. It could not be determined how long he had been dead for, but he hadn't been seen by anyone for 7 years. He'd actually been sailing the world on his yacht for the past 20 years. It's thought that from the way he was sitting, death was unexpected, perhaps from a heart attack. The police said there was no evidence of a second person aboard, and no weapon was found on board the yacht. Moving on to number 8 now, we have Home. This is a 1948 picture of a girl who grew up in a Nazi concentration camp. Now she was asked to draw what home was, and this is what she drew. The photograph was taken by David Seymour in a home for emotionally disturbed children located in Warsaw. Not much is known about the girl other than her name, Teresa. The swirling lines are a stark reminder of horrors of the Holocaust. More than 1.5 million Jewish children were killed in the Holocaust. Those that survived often ended up like Teresa, lost, shocked, and unable to grasp a simple concept like home. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Obsession. George Karl Tanzler was a radiology technician from Germany. He moved to Florida where he married Maria de Hoyos, a local Cuban-American woman. She died of tuberculosis 5 years later, despite his best efforts to save her. He wouldn't accept her death though. After her funeral, George dug up Maria's body and took her to his home. He attempted to preserve her. This is the picture of his efforts. He attached her bones together with wire and coat hangers and fitted her face with glass eyes. He replaced her skin with silk cloth soaked in wax. He gave her a wig and filled her insides with rags. He covered her in jewelry, and the smell was masked with copious amounts of perfume. The body was eventually discovered by authorities a full 9 years after he first removed her from her resting place. Next up at number 6 now, we have the catacombs. This is a very disturbing picture. Please look away now if you're sensitive to death and all that kind of thing. This is a story of Masha, a Ukrainian woman who went out with a large group of friends to celebrate New Year's Eve in 2005. It was a foggy night with temperatures around freezing. The group stumbled into the Odessa catacombs, an ancient tunnel and cave system that spans for over 1,500 miles. Somehow, Masha became separated from her group and got lost in the dark. She seems to have wandered for days with no food or water before slipping into a coma and then death. Her body wasn't discovered for months until this picture was taken by some local boys who found her. Still, she wasn't retrieved by authorities for a further 2 years. When the story was shared on Reddit, people tried to imagine how terrifying it must be to be lost in the dark like that, pitch black darkness, unable to see any difference between your eyes being closed and open, and totally alone. Moving on to number 5 now, we have shell-shocked. In World War I, there were hundreds of thousands of soldiers who got shell-shocked, a type of PTSD brought on from the endless bombardment they had to endure. Tens of thousands of soldiers were treated for the disorder. Victims were said to have a 1,000-yard stare, looking into the distance as their mind went blank. Here is a famous picture from a soldier during the Battle of the Somme, a battle which killed 3 million men. This man appears to be suffering from shell shock. He has a crazed look in his eyes that is often associated with those who had shell shock. It's an image that has become increasingly associated with war, especially the hell that was World War I. Next up at number 4 now, we have the subway. In 2012, the New York Post ran a story with this picture. It was of Ki Suk Han, a 58-year-old man who was pushed onto the tracks by a stranger. He was fatally struck by a train seconds later. The suspect was 30-year-old Naeem Davis, who confessed to pushing the innocent man onto the tracks. The picture shocked New Yorkers and people around the world. Why was someone taking a picture instead of trying to help? Should the New York Post even have ran that story and published that that picture? What do you guys think? Next, at number 3 now, we have Madame Violet. This is a picture of Violet Spears, otherwise known as Madame. At number 3 now, we have Madame Violet. This is a picture of Violet Spears, otherwise known as Madame Violet. She was the leader of a group of real-life vampires in Edinburgh in the late 19th century. They were called the Hive. They became known as lovely but dangerous partiers, seducing men and women with drugs and alcohol, and then making them donate their blood to them, so to speak. Some of the victims even joined the Hive, and she became their leader too. In 1882 and 1884, she was apparently voted the scariest woman in England, even though she never left Scotland. That's how scary she is. She scared another country she didn't even live in. Moving on to number 2 now, we have the Vulture and the Little Girl. On March 26, 1993, the New York Times shared a picture known as Struggling Girl. It showed a famine-stricken boy, initially believed to be a girl who had collapsed from malnutrition during a famine in South Sudan. In the background, a vulture waits patiently. These birds have a keen sense of death, and this one has its eyes on the boy. The picture shocks the world. The photographer, Kevin Carter, was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for his photography. He actually killed himself just 4 months later. The reasons are largely unknown, but many people speculate that pictures like this can drive anyone down a dark path. And finally, number 1 now, we have the Hiroshima shadows. When the US dropped a nuclear bomb on Japan's Hiroshima, over 100,000 people were killed. Some of them who were close enough were literally vaporized into thin air. The intense heat of the explosion caused what's now called nuclear shadows. The blast forever changed surfaces because of the UV radiation. Surfaces that were blocked by people looked different to its surroundings, leaving a sort of permanent shadow of the person who was vaporized. This is one of the most striking images for me. What appears to be an old person stood at the bottom of the steps. You can even see the cane in their hand. It's a shocking reminder of how destructive weapons of war have become, how quickly life can be snuffed out in an instant, leaving only a shadow behind. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Hampton Court Palace ghost. In December 2003, security cameras at Hampton Court Palace in England had a problem with a fire door that just kept opening when nobody else was around. They decided to check the security tapes, and to their absolute horror, these are the images they saw. Some sort of skeletal figure opening the doors before retreating back inside. A spokesperson for the palace assured the public that this was not a joke, and they have not manufactured these pictures, saying they genuinely do not know who or what it is. Moving on to number 9 now, we have Bud Dwyer. He was a politician and treasurer for Pennsylvania who was exposed for receiving money from a computer technology company so that he would steer a government contract in their favor. He faced a sentence of up to 55 years in prison and a $300,000 fine. He arranged a news conference with dozens of reporters attending, although they were not told what the purpose of it was. Many expected him to just resign, but the reality was much more shocking. After a 30-minute speech, Dwyer produced a Magnum revolver. That's the moment this picture was taken, as Dwyer tried to warn reporters to not intervene. Before they could, Dwyer put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger, killing himself instantly. Most media outlets chose to not show the full footage, and many newspapers just posted this now famous image. Moving on to number 8 now, we have the Cooper family photo. This is a fairly famous one that many of you guys may have seen. I know I've talked about it somewhere. The story goes that in the 1950s, the Cooper family of Texas bought an old house and moved into it. On their first night there, they took a photo of the mum and grandma posing with 2 kids at the dining room table. When they developed the picture though, this is what they saw. Some sort of dark body was falling from the ceiling behind them. People have been trying to figure out what's going on with this picture ever since it first started circulating online in about 2009. Others have said that the picture is a complete fake due to the lack of information about it, and also clues that it's been photoshopped. Still a scary one either way. Coming in at number 7 now, we have the schoolboy. This one was shared by Reddit user In the Lion's Mane. He said he comes from a small rural town near some mountains. One day an old school was being torn down. A family friend went there and he took this picture with his phone. He didn't see the boy standing there until later on. The whole family was freaked out beyond belief. Standing right there was what looked like the actual spirit of a little boy. His face was clearly defined, but his body began to fade around his torso until his legs just tapered away. What do you guys make of this one? Is this a former student rising up to say a last goodbye before his old school disappears forever? Next up, number 6 now, we have John Torrington. He was a British officer who took part in an Arctic expedition in 1846 but died of pneumonia aged 22. Nobody knew what happened to the crew until some of their graves were found on a remote Canadian island. In the 1980s, scientists dug through almost 5 feet of permafrost until they hit a coffin. They opened it up, and this was staring back at them. The body of John Torrington, quite literally frozen in time. The eyes were open, still bright and blue. His skin was battered and bruised, but barely decomposed. The Arctic climate had acted like a perfect freezer. Scientists took samples to study and then buried his body as they found it, where it could still look the same to this day. We have the demon. This one has been circulating online for a number of years now, but the origins of it are a bit of a mystery. It was taken in a hospital room shortly before a patient died. You can just about make out the patient lying in the bed, but the most shocking thing is what's standing on the bed. Some sort of demonic figure hunched over with huge twisted limbs. Many who have shared the picture claim that it's not just some sort of demonic-like figure. They say it's an actual picture of a demon caught tormenting a patient and trying to take them to hell in the last few hours of their life. Next up at number 4 now, we have the Amityville Ghost. This photo was allegedly taken inside the famous Amityville house in 1976. That house was the site of a brutal murder of a family, and many paranormal investigators have been drawn to it ever since. It features what appears to be a young boy peeking out of the doorway. The picture was taken by an automatic camera that took infrared pictures to capture the second floor landing during the night. This picture of the Amityville Ghost boy has left some speculating that it could be the ghost of the murdered child of the family, John DeFeo, who had lived in the house with his family prior to the current occupants. Others say this is an accidental picture taken of one of the investigators, but it certainly looks like a little boy to me. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the Grand Canyon. This picture was posted to Reddit by user Zombie Gaddafi. He said it was a photograph of his uncle at the Grand Canyon. At first glance, it looks like a normal picture. That is until you notice the hooded man standing in the bushes. Neither the photographer or the uncle noticed the man standing there. In fact, they swear there was nobody else even in the area, leading many to believe that the explanation for this appearance must belong to the paranormal. Coming at number 2 now, we have the Phoenix Lights. In 1997, thousands of people witnessed floating lights all over the city of Phoenix. This was the famous event that really hasn't had much press ever since. Witnesses claim to have observed a huge arrow-shaped UFO containing 5 spherical lights, or possibly light-emitting engines on. Even the governor at the time who saw the lights described them as otherworldly. One UFO advocate claimed to have performed a spectral analysis of the photographs that apparently proved the lights could not have been produced by a man-made source. Explanations since have ranged from military flares to atmospheric conditions, and yes, of course, visitors from another planet. What do you make of them? And finally, number 1 now, we have Jeremy Bentham. He was an English philosopher known as the founder of modern utilitarianism. When he died in 1932, he left his body to science and then for it to be permanently preserved for display. It all went well except for his head. The story goes that the taxidermy process left his face looking horrifying after a while. As it was on display and the authorities didn't want to alarm people, his head was replaced with a wax substitute. For some reason, though, they decided to put his real head on the floor between his own legs. This is a sight that visitors saw on their arrival before people realised that it's probably best to just store the scary looking head someplace else. Alright, and finally I'm going to do a bonus one now because I actually had too many, if you can believe it. This one is called Combustion. This is a shocking image from December 1966. It's the remains of the body of 92-year-old Dr. J. Irving Bentley. He was discovered in his Pennsylvania home by someone who was coming to read the meter. This is the scene they found. All that was left was Dr. Bentley's leg and slippered foot. The rest of him had been burned to ashes from an unknown internal chemical reaction. In the years since, many have held this picture up as a prime example of spontaneous combustion, a mysterious event in which some people seem to explode and burn on the spot for seemingly no reason at all. Maybe you have the explanation for this one though. I'd love to know. Starting off at number 10 now, we have Edward Paisnell. He's also known as the Beast of Jersey. He was a notorious sex offender who terrorized people on the island of Jersey in the English Channel between 1960 and 1971. This is what he wore more when breaking into people's homes at night. A rubber mask and nail-studded wristlers. He would attack women and children. He was convicted of 13 counts of assault. Sadly, that is thought to be only the tip of the iceberg, and there are perhaps many more victims than that. Paisnell was sentenced to 30 years in prison and later died on the Isle of Wight in 1994. Next up at number 9 now, we have Blanche Monnier. In 1901, the Paris Attorney General received an anonymous letter saying that a woman in Paris was being held prisoner against her will. When police arrived at the scene, this was what they saw. Blanche had been locked away in a secret room by her own mother for 25 years. She hadn't even seen sunlight in all of that time. In 1876, at the age of 25, her mother had locked her away after she tried to marry a lawyer who was not to her mother's liking. Her mother and brother continued living their lives after that, pretending to mourn the loss of Blanche, but the whole time she was living in this secret room. When police found her, the mother was arrested. She became ill and died 15 days later. Her brother was found to be mentally incapacitated. As for Blanche, she suffered from mental health problems and lived out the next 12 years of her life in a psychiatric hospital before dying at the age of 64. 1979. In 1978, he was a contestant on the ABC game show The Dating Game. Here's a picture of him on the show. It's made even more chilling when you realise that by this point, he had already killed 2 women. The host introduced him as a successful photographer who got his start when his father found him in the darkroom at the age of 13, fully developed. Between takes, you might find him skydiving or motorcycling. He won a date with a contestant on the show called Cheryl Bradshaw. She later refused to go out with him because she found him creepy. Yeah. Seems that her instincts were 100% accurate on that one. Coming in at number 6 now, we have Electrical Charge. Now, at first glance, this picture looks like quite a wholesome one. It's a picture of 18-year-old Michael McQuilkin and his 12-year-old brother, Sean. The year was 1975, and they had just climbed California's Morro Rock Mountain. Their hair that's standing up from the electrical charge is a sure sign that a lightning strike is about to occur. They didn't heed the warning from nature, though, and just moments after this picture was taken, they were struck by lightning. Now, some online articles claim that they died, but this wasn't the case. In an interview decades later, Michael said he remembers a flash of white light as bright as arc-wielding, a deafening explosion, and the feeling of becoming weightless and being lifted off the ground. They were knocked unconscious and suffered third-degree burns, but learnt their lesson for life. Moving on to number 5 now, we have Omeira Sanchez. She was a 13-year-old Colombian girl killed in the aftermath of the 1985 eruption of the Nevada del Ruiz volcano. After her home was destroyed, she was pinned beneath the debris of her own house, where she remained trapped in water for 3 days. When authorities found her, she was in good spirits. They attempted to pull her out, but found the task impossible without breaking her legs in the process. Each time a person tried to pull her up, the water pulled around her, rising so that it seemed she would drown if they let her go. They found that her legs were caught under a door made of bricks, with her dead aunt's arms clutched tightly around her legs. Sanchez eventually died as a result of either gangrene or hypothermia. The photographer felt the photo was a way to report properly on the courage and the suffering and the dignity of this little girl. Next up at number 4 now, we have Columbine. This picture may look like a normal school photo, but it has a dark story attached to it. It is the class of 99 from Columbine School, taken just a few weeks before the infamous school shooting there that killed 12 students and 1 teacher, as well as injuring a further 21 people. The shooters were Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. In this picture, they can be seen in the top left with their friends pretending to shoot guns. This school shooting is regarded as one of the deadliest high school massacres in US history and sparked debates over gun control laws, high school cliques, subcultures and bullying. Next up at number 3 now, we have Goebbels' glare. This is a picture of Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister and a close friend of Adolf Hitler's. The picture was taken in 1933 during a League of Nations meeting. The picture captures the exact moment that Goebbels realized that the photographer, Alfred Eisenstadt, was Jewish. The hatred in Goebbels' eyes tells the story of a man who pushed Nazi propaganda onto Germans in order to control them and pave the way for the Holocaust in the years to come. 12 years after this photo was taken, on May 1st, 1945, with the Russian army closing in on Berlin and the Nazis defeated, Goebbels and his wife administered cyanide to their 6 children before also killing themselves. Next up at number 2 now, we have animal abuse. This is a picture that will enrage any animal lovers out there. It's of Alina Savchenko. She and her friend Alina Orlova were accused of torturing and killing cats and dogs for occult sexual fetish videos that were sent to China. How Bizarre is that sentence. The Russian pair were linked to the case after police linked all over to the videos because of a distinctive hand tattoo. They tried to flee as the story gathered over the images, but were eventually detained under house arrest. When she was detained, Savchenko called herself the Devil's Duchess. In one picture, she is shown holding a recently killed puppy's heart with the caption, "It's for you, Anubis," a reference to the ancient Egyptian god of the dead. And finally, number one now, we have Panama. We're going to look at more than one picture here. There's quite a few. They are of Dutch tourists Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. In 2014, the pair went missing after taking a day hike near the town of Boquete in Panama. These pictures were found on their recovered camera, which contains over 100 photos, all taken within 10 days of the girls going missing. Some locals found bone fragments and a backpack believed to be owned by one of them. Later DNA tests confirmed that the remains did belong to them. The last few pictures are perhaps the most disturbing, taken in the middle of the night in the jungle, a full 8 days after the girls went missing. Many people were stumped by the mystery of what happened to them and why they were taking pictures of the jungle after 8 days of being lost. The leading theory is that they fell off a cliff, injuring one of them so that she couldn't move. The uninjured one then waited with her friend for 8 days before leaving her. Why leave in the middle of the night though? Well, some people think something scared her into suddenly leaving, perhaps a jaguar or other predator. In the end though, both of them died, and these pictures are the only creepy clues as to piecing together what happened. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the uninvited guest. This is a creepy picture originally posted to Reddit. The user said that everyone in this picture knew each other at the party. All the people you see in the light, well, everyone except for one single person. In case you haven't spotted it yet, take a look at the far right of this picture. There you can see a boy with glowing eyes. He's standing in the shadows and appears almost translucent. The person who took this picture said they posted it to Facebook the next day and asked every single other person in the picture if they knew who that face belonged to. No matter how hard they tried, none of them did. While some of them have chosen to forget the picture altogether, others who were there that night have never been able to forget that boy's face. They believe it's the spirit of a child from years before wanting to get in on the party. Ugh. Moving on now to number 9, we have Pogo the Clown. Now for many people, this picture by itself may be terrifying enough. It's a picture taken of Pogo the Clown, taken sometime in the 1970s. Even for an old picture, there's something not...
Let's pause it. Head home. Head to bed. Wake up in the morning. Wag school. Here we are. Which rocket? Head upstairs. My room. Is my room? I don't know. This is definitely not my room. Nope. My mom's room. Sister. Bathroom. My room. Helm. Yeah, so this is my room. Head to bed. 7 in the morning. Unlock the door. Look it back up. My mum has the car. It's not my car, of course. I'm only 15. I can't drive. I have to walk. Let's chill. Let's jump down here. Let's go down here and chill. Park over here. Then what's this? Okay, a bar. A bar, huh? Welcome, kid. How can I help you? Nah, I'm not looking for a drink. I'm just chilling. Like, you know, all good. See ya. See ya. Okay. Jump down. Let's chill. This way. Let's chill. Right here. Smoke a blunt for the day and press play.
Quite right about it. People just feel uncomfortable when they view it, and there may be a very good reason for that. The man behind the clown makeup is actually John Wayne Gacy, one of America's most notorious serial killers. During the 1970s in Chicago, he lured 14 young men and boys to his home and tortured them before killing them. He hid their bodies in the crawl space of his own home, where he lived with his wife and 2 children. They had no idea what was going on. By day, though, he was Pogo the Clown, appearing at local children's parties to entertainer,
night,
or potentially even
a
scope
serial
out.
killer.
He was so popular that he even met the mayor, who thanked him for all the joy that he spread. In 1994, he was sentenced to death by lethal injection. One of his final quotes from the interview was simply, "The dead won't bother you. It's the living you have to worry about." Moving on now to number 8, we have Telling Grandin. That's the name of the old scrapbook where this picture comes from. Its 28 pages contain photographs collected by an Evanston, Illinois group during a visit by train to the New Orleans Carnival of 1903. Perhaps in person and viewed in the context of their own time, this picture of a woman in a dress and a mask would seem entertaining, I guess. Many people these days, though, feel quite the opposite about it. Some have described it as very disturbing, creepy, and deeply unsettling. It's been over 100 years since this picture of a carnival goer was taken, and yet the picture has found its way into many lists like this and keeps people coming back to study it and examine why exactly it's so very creepy. For me, though, it's those eyes, or rather, lack of eyes. What do you guys think? Moving on to number 7 now, we have Omar. Of all the pictures in this video, I don't know many that seem as unassuming as this one when you first look at it. This is a picture taken in the town of Omar, Northern Ireland. It was taken on the 15th of August, 1998, a day that would go down in history. Nobody in this picture knew that the red Vauxhall car parked right there actually contained a bomb inside. It was placed there by a splinter group of the IRA who opposed the ceasefire that ended the troubles in Northern Ireland a year before. They had phoned the police to tell them about the bomb so that they could move people away. Warnings were inaccurate though, and police had inadvertently moved people towards that red car with the bomb in. Moments after this picture was taken, the 500-pound bomb went off. 29 people were killed, over 200 were injured. Incredibly, the man and the child in the foreground of this picture survived, but the person who took the picture was killed. Next on number 6 now, we have gas mask. There are rumors that this creepy picture comes from a small Japanese island where locals are forced to wear gas masks to protect themselves from the toxic fumes of a nearby volcano. In reality, though, it appears to be a picture showing members of the Young Pioneers youth group in Soviet Russia donning their gas masks during a civil defense drill near Leningrad in 1937. The government-run group took this picture as a sign of strength, meant to show the whole world the efficiency and preparedness of the youth organization. For many people, though, it's just a haunting image of faceless children staring you down. Coming in number 5 now, we have Tyler Hadley. I find this picture very disturbing. Again, it's one of those pictures that needs the backstory for you to truly understand how dark it is. The guy on the right is Tyler Hadley, age 17 at the time. He had sent a text out to his friends earlier that night, inviting them to a party at his family home in Port St. Lucie, Florida. He finished off the text by saying, "Don't worry, parents won't be here." That sentence is incredibly scary when you learn that Hadley had just beaten his own parents to death with a crawl hammer in their own bedroom. He then partied with his friends on the ground floor of the house. None of them had any idea what had happened. One of them actually took this now infamous picture with Hadley himself. He then told one of his friends what he had done. The friend found the bloody bodies in the bedroom and called the police. Tyler was sentenced to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Moving on to number 4 now, we have ectoplasm. This picture is said to be from a medium in a trance while contacting the dead. The strange substance streaming across the picture is allegedly ectoplasm. For many years, photos like this were quite common, claiming to show ectoplasm oozing from orifices in the medium's body. They claim that spiritual entities drape this substance over their non-physical body, enabling them to interact in the physical and real universe. Among modern-day believers, though, this picture has become famous due to its mysterious origins. Nobody is quite sure who the onlooker is. Nobody knows who the spiritual medium is. Some people even speculate that they are not a willing participant in this, that they do not want to enter into the trance and speak to the dead. Either way, the striking picture is enough to jog anyone's imagination. Next up, number 3 now, we have the hidden mother. This is a picture of a very common practice back in Victorian times. Back then, early cameras had slow exposure times. They required the subject to stay still for a long period of time. Obviously, this is very difficult to do with children. They rarely sit still. If the family wanted to have a picture of just the children, this is what they would do, the hidden mother trick. The photographer would cover the mother in a shawl so they could sit there and hold their child still. It was a popular technique at the time, but it's left us with many creepy pictures like this. Moving on to number 2 now, we have Travis Alexander. This is the last ever picture taken of Travis Alexander. It was taken by his ex-girlfriend Jodi Arias while he showered. Moments after the picture was taken, she stabbed him nearly 30 times, severing his jugular vein. She then shot him in the head with a shotgun. A medical examiner later determined that he was likely already dead before the gunshot wound was inflicted. This had come after she had stalked him, accessed his Facebook account, and slashed his car tires. Some people have said that by zooming in on Travis's eye, you can actually see Jodi Arias before she attacked. She was charged with first-degree murder in 2013 and sentenced to life in prison. And finally, number one now, we have the vampire heart. This is the mummified heart of an alleged vampire called Auguste de la Grange. He was said to be responsible for the deaths of more than 40 people in the early 1900s in Louisiana. The victims were all found dismembered in their own homes. One thing the crime scenes all had in common was the distinct lack of blood present at the scene. After police efforts to catch the murderer yielded no results, locals began to